Let me welcome you once again. At the last class, Dima was sharing with you as a woman on how to communicate effectively with your spouse. And I believe that you've had a fantastic time. Thank you so much for the comments and your feedback to the Institute. We are really grateful for it. Now, today, I'm going to take this a little bit further because one of the greatest challenges people have is on how to get the best out of their children. Do you have a child that is masturbating, or your child is hooked on pornography, or you have a child that you don't even seem to understand? These are some of the questions a lot of our parents are always asking, and we become agitated. You have a child that maybe you think is a godly child, then the next minute you get a call from your school to say your child is found with drugs. What are you going to do? Now, we call that kind of a child a erring child. Now, unknown to many of us, a erring child is not necessarily a bad child. An erring child could actually be a misunderstood child because children come in 4 different packages. You have the kind of child we call the intimidating honors. Intimidating honors will question everything you ask them to do. They are little CEOs. You have the creative convertibles. If you have a child who is always looking for shoe and who is looking for socks, that's a creative convertible. It's a child who comes home on Friday and you ask him if he has homework, and he tells you he doesn't have any homework. But on Monday, he begins to cry. And you wonder, why are you crying? Mr. Yak is going to beat me. Why? I've not done my homework. But I thought you said there was no homework. He completely forgot. You have the third one, who is the dependable truck, slow and steady. He never says anything. But you have the systematic four, who is always saying, my thing, my mommy, my daddy. He always wants to hang around you at all times. Now, those are 4 different packages. The way you correct them is totally different. Now, an erring child is a main cast of a movie in an unpleasant situation. Now, when you have an unpleasant or an erring child, what must you do? I'm sure that is the first thing that you're interested in. Well, I'm going to give you there are about 5 different things you can do, but maybe I'll give you about 2 or 3 of them. The first thing you need to do when you have an erring child is to calm down, because agitation never solves any problem. Now, when you calm down, there's a step to it. The first thing you need to do is to take a deep breath. Now, when you are exhaling, you exhale as if you have a straw in your mouth. So can we do that together right now? So I will count 1 to go. Can you take a deep breath now? Can you exhale? Now, if you do that 7 times, the next thing you do is to cast out the negative energy by engaging in an activity that contradicts what your child is doing. For example, you caught your child smoking. Ideally, you should give him a slap. That's the default mode. But if you do the direct opposite, which is you embrace your child, because your child is not the cigarette. The cigarette is the action. The action is not the identity. So you do the exact opposite of what you should have done. The next thing you need to do is to recall a past event that you overcame that nobody believed that you could overcome. Because what your child is doing is transient. He can actually overcome that. Then, the next thing you do is visualize the positive end you want to see, which is your child turning out right. And whatever you see, be grateful for that end. Number 2, you observe from a vantage position. What does that mean? Whatever your child is doing right now that you consider unpleasant, if you focus too much on it, it will wear you out. Now, what we focus on, we exaggerate and we magnify. But if you go 10,000 feet above sea level and you look at the same thing, you will realize that it's not as big as you actually thought it is, because from that view, it now looks very tiny. So, how do you observe from a vantage position? Now, the first thing I want you to do, can you pick a sheet of paper right now? Now, I want you to tabulate it. Right on the left side, good. On the right side, bad. Now, on the bad side, can you list the unpleasant things you don't like about your child? List everything. Now, can you list what is good about your child? Let me shock you. Every time I ask parents to do this, what is good about their children is usually about 12, 13. What is bad is usually about 5. Even the 5, they do a bit of repetition. So, for example, you write, my child is stubborn, then my child is not respectful, right? It's still the same thing basically. But the next thing you need to do, can you cancel every negative against the positive? If you do that, you would realize that you still have a lot of positives left. The next question I'm going to ask you is, when was the last time you appreciated your child for the positive that he's done? So your child greeted you in the morning. Did you appreciate him for it? Your child swept his room. Did you appreciate it? Did you acknowledge it? We assume that those things are normal. They're natural. So our children, we don't catch them do what is right, and we do not affirm them. But when they do what is wrong, all hell is let loose. Now you realize that you chose to focus on what is unpleasant about your child, and that's what became magnified. Can you choose something positive to focus on right now? And that takes me to the third thing, which is where I will stop for this particular broadcast. You need to discover patterns. What your child is doing is what you focus on, but there's how and why. Oftentimes when you understand why and how, we are able to deal with empathy as against judgment. A boy was called gay by his parents because he began to do same sex at the age of 14. When they brought that boy to us and we began to analyze, we realized that this was a boy who was raped by his uncle at the age of 4 and never told anyone. And he said to me, from that moment, he just developed that penchant for same sex. Now, the parents were beating him, they were doing all kinds of things, but they didn't ask why. Is it doing? How did he become this? And why did he become that? There's a pattern for everything your child is doing. So you want to find out what happens before he engages in that behavior. If you develop that flow chart, you need to activate your eyes to observe how he does what he does. There's a pattern to masturbation. There's a pattern to pornography. There's a pattern to all these things. If you can draw the pattern, then you realize that. So you say he does pornography. What happens before pornography? You will find loneliness. What happens before loneliness? You will find is sad. What happens before sadness? Maybe he's just had an argument with you. Why did he have an argument with you? You will find that maybe you did not allow him hear his opinion. Now, if you look at that entire flowchart, you will look at it and say, what must I take away? So maybe you need to learn to understand your child by taking away that argument. Then it will not lead to the final outcome, which is the masturbation or the pornography. Now, so far, I have told you that an erring child is not a bad child. It's not, it could be a misunderstood child. It could also be a main cast in an unpleasant scene in a movie. Now, I've delivered to you 3 core tips that can help you get the best out of an erring child. Now, these are some of the core things we teach when you come for Family STEM Engineering Certification Program. We deliver the tools that can help you maximize your parenting journey, that can help you maximize your family life journey, and you can experience bliss. Let me shock you. People come for this course. One of the things they say to us is that after this course, they get back home and they never yell again and never spank their children again. And the children are coming to ask them, Mommy, are you okay? Daddy, is everything all right? Because you are no longer shouting. Now, won't you want to experience a life in which you have absolute bliss, where you no longer yell, where you no longer shout, where your child is now your playmate? What will happen if you can apply the tips I've shared with you that can totally transform your child? When I come the next time, I will try and take this to the next level. But before then, I would like to also hear from you. So you can drop your comments or your questions on the link below. I hope to hear from you. The most important nation on earth is your family. When your family experiences bliss, society will be totally transformed. We look forward to welcoming you to the Family System Engineering Certification course. Till then, enjoy your life and understand that we honor you. My name is Praise Fowowe. For 17 years of my life, I have worked with troubled families in experiencing their family wellness and family bliss. And that's what we do to you because that's what we hold our world. Bye-bye.